mic on?
Movies based off of books are everywhere, and movies are a big part of our lives, whether we like to admit it or not. From our childhood to our adulthood, they're everywhere. There are advertisements everywhere on the internet. Just outside, you can see thousands of billboards for movies that are coming out in 2 years' time. Movies are a big impact on some of our greatest memories, whether it's sitting down and watching all of the Star Wars movies before the next one comes out, or when you're a child and you're watching your first Disney movie. They have a huge impact of some of our greatest moments in our childhood and in our adulthood. And the same can be said about books. Books they're stories. They're worlds that our minds take us to when we're reading them. And they're so important that teachers, when we're teenagers and sometimes even close adults, they tell us to read them constantly because, well, they're good. That's a big part of it. They take us to different worlds, and they have different genres, from sci-fi fantasies to insane adventures with pirates. They have a wide variety of different things, and the two things are fairly similar in importance. But when these two worlds come together, it doesn't always work out. Books that are based off of movies, they don't do well. Some are good, like Harry Potter, but some of them fail awfully, like Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. But why do these things happen? Why are these things not put together as well as movies that are just made off the spot? It doesn't make a lot of sense, but I'm going to try my best to break it down piece by piece. First, let's take a look at one of the most important parts about making a movie: a script. A script is a written piece of work that has character names, dialogue, plot, and, setting. A book is a written piece of work that has characters, character development, some cases dialogue, plot, and setting. These things are so similar, you would think it would be next to impossible to get these things wrong when moving it from one medium to another. But I remind you of these. These are movies that are based off of books, and they are awful. Brave New World did terribly. It had random jump cuts that made no sense. It took out large chunks of the book just to make it fit. I, Frankenstein is supposed to be an adaptation and a continuation of Mary Shelley's original work, and it does awful by adding in things that make no sense to the original source material. And Alice in Wonderland, no. These are awful movies, but they shouldn't be. Transferring these things to one medium to another shouldn't be that difficult, but there are things that go into it that do make it difficult. For instance, a movie itself is about 2 hours at the least nowadays. And transferring an entire book that can go on to over 200, maybe 300 pages, depending on what book you're reading, that's insane to get that much story, that much character development, all into 2 hours. So certain elements have to be taken out, including certain characters, maybe even important plot points, but they try their best to work around it. But sometimes, like in these cases, it doesn't always work out. Another thing to keep in mind, one thing that can really harm how a movie does is how much money it has. Every movie has a special budget. Sometimes they go over that budget. The Great Gatsby, however, for instance, had a reported cost of $125 million, and that's not including advertising, the payment it costs to have your movie played in certain theaters, and that also doesn't count in the cost that it took to reship a bunch of recreations of the Great Gatsby book with the movie poster as its front, which happens a lot. when you make a movie based off of a book. They redistribute the book with the movie poster, so that counts to the cost of what it is. It was estimated that the movie, in order to make a legitimate profit, it needed to make $300 million in order to get any profit. The movie, thankfully, made $351 million, but $51 million is, while it is over the goal that they needed to get, that's a very low margin of what it could have made. And mainly that is because there's a 50-50 chance of it actually doing well. Rotten Tomatoes rated it a 42 out of 100. That's a pretty close slip to 50%. And it's not just with The Great Gatsby. This kind of 50-50 split happens with a lot of movies based off of books. The Giver had 36 out of 100. The Outsiders, 65. Inkheart, 38. These are just incredible how split down the middle these people are. People's opinions are split so far down the middle that it's a 50-50 coin toss whether the movie will make any profit. And, well, that's kind of, that's not very good for directors and actors who have to take a gamble on this movie. Another thing is that can go wrong with a movie are the actors. The actors are another very important part of the whole movie because they are the people who are bringing the characters that you love in your stories to life. Like Leonardo DiCaprio as the Great Gatsby was a great choice. It brought the character of Great Gatsby to life that you could see him. You could actually see the character that you love to read so much. But sometimes picking an actor can be difficult. For instance, the actor may not have the right look. In books, they usually give a good description of what the character's supposed to look like, also with their personality traits. But sometimes the book doesn't add in those details, and when it doesn't, the reader has to make up what that character looks like by themselves. And when that happens, that means that character is open for interpretation. So when the movie comes out and the character that you had to interpret yourself doesn't look how you interpret it, well, that can make you a little upset that the character doesn't look like you thought he would look like. He doesn't look right to you. And that can sway some people's opinions. But, sometimes actors do get the wrong look. It happens from time to time. But when you get the right look, sometimes the actor's just so good that you can't help but cast him in that role because he's just such a great actor. But sometimes it happens in reverse. Sometimes you have the right look, but the actor is awful. He's boring. For example, in the Brave New World movie, they casted Leonard Nimoy as the director of their dystopian future. He was a great choice. He had a great look, and he acted very well. That was a combination of both positives, but it can also have both negatives. You can have an actor that looks nothing like the character from the book, but at the same time acts terribly in the movie. It can happen, and it happens a lot more than it should. Another way that people pick actors is fame. If an actor's famous enough, they'll just cast that person just because of the name alone, because they know that this person is so famous that people will go see his movie just because he's in it. These are just some of the examples. Nicolas Cage as the Ghost Rider. Everyone went to go see it because Nicolas Cage is the Ghost Rider. What's not to love? Jim Carrey as Mr. Popper's Penguins. He does not exactly look like Mr. Popper, but he's Jim Carrey. This is a Jim Carrey movie. You're gonna go see it. Jack Black, Goosebumps. He's Jack Black. One of the main reasons that you even went to go see that movie is because Jack Black's name was on the poster. These are the posters. Just one name is all you need in order to go see that movie. You don't even have to read the source material. You just have the actor. That's it. And the actor knows this sometimes. Jim Carrey, he did not fit the role, but he knew that people would go see the movie because it's a Jim Carrey movie. He didn't put his A game into it. He barely did all the things that we enjoyed a Jim Carrey performance to have. And this happens a lot more than it should. And, well, that's a bad thing. Very bad. But speaking of Nicolas Cage as the Ghost Rider, there are certain literary works that can be translated very well. In fact, that's why they're made most often. And that's comic book movies. Nicolas Cage as the Ghost Rider doesn't make any sense, but the Ghost Rider comic book translated very well. Because in a comic book, everything is drawn out for you. Literally everything. From how the character's supposed to look, what he's going to be saying, the setting around them, the costume, the personality traits, everything is drawn out for you in a comic book. That's why comic book movies are so easy to make, because there's little to no way you can mess them up. Not to say that they don't get messed up. It happens, from bad CGI or boring actors to stupid sequels to Son of the Mask. It happens. Comic book movies can be bad. But, and that's the thing, though, with this. When they do go bad, everyone notices because of how simple it is to get it right. Which means that people judge these more harshly than movies based off of normal chapter books. But when you go to see these movies, the movies that I've posted on here that did badly, in this day and age, it's very difficult to keep gaining money when a movie does bad on the first day. If people go and see the movie on the first day and it does terribly, there's a chance, thanks to modern technology of social media like Twitter, Facebook, even Tumblr, Instagram, Snapchat, YouTube, all of these places are used so people can tell people what they thought about the movie, whether it was good or whether it was bad. And if enough people say that it's bad, no one will go see the movie. Fourth Stick was stopped in its tracks after a week because everyone hated the movie so much. They went to every social media site and told everyone, this movie is awful, do not go see it. And I'm one of them. I did it myself because it was so bad. This happens not just with comic book movies, though. Every kind of movie is able to be destroyed within days, maybe even hours upon release from midnight screenings. It happens way too often. And that's why people are afraid to take risks. But when they do, sometimes it works, but when it doesn't, it can destroy them. Just completely. Now, I know I've mentioned a lot of bad movies and ways that movies can go bad, but that doesn't mean that all of them are bad. Some of our most favorite movies are based off of books, and they've done very well, like Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park did very well, Harry Potter did very well, Of Mice and Men did amazing. These are good movies, and they're all based off of books, and we love to watch them every year. But again, they can be forced to have bad actor choices, but everything is, clearly these are good actor choices here, but again, the same things that can happen, they could have happened to these movies. They could have. And with Jurassic Park, the sequels have done that. A lot. But sometimes when these movies took risks. Jurassic Park used CGI, that at the time wasn't very good, but it was breathtaking to watch. Harry Potter, those books are huge. And they had to condense an entire book into one movie. That's a risk. Of Mice and Men didn't take that many risks, but it's still a book-based movie. Back then, it wasn't really that much of a problem, but it was still a risk just to make the movie in general. And have the kind of graphic scenes that the book had to translate into it with the same kind of emotion that you would have while reading the book is very difficult to translate. But again, translating can be difficult, like translating one character to the movie, like with these guys. Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze, Tommy Lee Jones as Two-Face, Ben Affleck as Daredevil. These are bad translations. They don't fit, but it can happen. And it happens way too often. But again, it is possible to do it good. It is possible to do it well. And that's a big fact. Because that it can do well, that some of them have done well, is probably the reason that they're still being made. I mean, these movies are still being made. They're based off the books. Even if one of them is a sequel to one that did terrible. But the point is, these movies are still being made, even after all of the bad ones, after all of the terrible things that the past movies have done, all the hate and criticism that people have gotten, but they've also gotten good criticisms. Even though a movie's bad, doesn't mean everyone hates them. There's over 1 billion people in the world. At least one of them is going to enjoy the movie. At least one. I may just despise one of the Harry Potter movies, but other people may adore them as famed successes. You may despise Inkheart because you thought it was boring and went nowhere. I enjoyed the special effects. Every movie, whether it be bad or good, has some gleaming hope that some people attach to, that they actually enjoy it. And, well, that's kind of important, because as long as one person enjoys your movie, you have a fan base. And that's what people in Hollywood go off of. They go off fan bases. As long as it has some kind of following, they'll keep making these movies. But you can't blame, there's one person that not a lot of people, that most people will blame one person when they make these movies. The director. The director is the problem. This director had no idea about the source material. This director didn't know anything about any of these books. They didn't know anything. They never even picked up the book. Well, that can't be true. If they made the movie and they at least tried to make it good, then they did read it. They care about the book just as much as you do. They care about the book enough to make it real, to make the characters that were on those pages, the heroes, the villains, all of the things that were in your books, your favorite characters to love. They wanted to see those characters because they love those characters just as much as you do. They have strong memories with these books. So they wanted to move them from the pages of the book where you couldn't see them to a movie where they could enjoy them, so everyone could enjoy them. And, again, movies based off of books can do badly. Some of them are good, some of them are bad, but everyone has their own opinion. And that's the only thing you can hope, to have your own opinion about it. If it does well, so what? I enjoyed it. That's all you can take away from it. That's it.